So today, Nate and I are thrilled to welcome back two longtime friends of the podcast, John O'Sullivan and Dr. Jerry Lynch. Now, both of these are remarkable individuals and they have been invaluable guests in the past, and we're lucky to have them join us again. As parents whose kids who have gone through or are almost finished with their collegiate sports careers, I think John and Jerry bring a wealth of wisdom to the table. And so Nate and I figured, hey, why not tap into that experience to help us maybe avoid all the mistakes that they made along the way and learn from the things that they got right. John and Jerry, they're not just expert in sports. I think they're both incredibly reflective and curious. They're always seeking deeper meaning and understanding and learning from their experiences. And that's why I really value them. John founded the Changing the Game project in 2012 after 2 decades of playing and coaching soccer across youth, high school, collegiate, and professional levels. He's also the author of 3 #1 best-selling books, including Changing the Game, The Parent's Guide to Raising Happy, High-Performing Athletes, and The Championship Teammate. Dr. Jerry Lynch is a true pioneer in the field of sports psychology. He's mentored athletes, parents, and coaches to explore the deeper mental, emotional, and spiritual components of sports and life. Over the past 30 years, his guidance have been a part of 54 Final Four appearances and 36 national championships. He's worked with elite teams like the Golden State Warriors alongside Steve Kerr. In today's conversation, we're going to dive into their unique insights around sports parenting. So trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. Welcome to the Coaching Culture Podcast. I'm JP Nerman, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nate Sanderson. Our mission here is simple. We want to help coaches become better leaders and build better team cultures. If you're interested in learning more about our work as leadership coaches and facilitators, or if you want to explore our online courses and books, head on over to tocculture.com or our other co-host, betsybutterick.com. That's her website. While you're at tocculture.com, don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. It's packed with notes from each podcast episode, our latest articles, and practical culture building tips. Also, just one more thing before we get into today's episode. I think this is a great one to share with your parents. All right, share it and then try to have a conversation about it with them, whether it's at a parent meeting or in some kind of a one-on-one type of conversation. I think it's, especially if you're a sports parent yourself, it's an opportunity to get vulnerable and talk about the things that you struggle with. All right, enough about that. Let's get started with today's conversation with Dr. Jerry Lynch and John O'Sullivan. It's exciting to be here with you guys on your newest book, which is phenomenal for many reasons. One is because sports parents definitely need help today and need more guidance. You all have both been sports parents, and you've also been coaches, and you also are as experienced and knowledgeable around sports, sporting culture, leadership, coaching, as anybody out there. So finally, you guys got it together and wrote this book. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. But today's conversation is really going to focus on how you guys can help us, me and Nate, as young sports parents, be better. And I think that this conversation will be beneficial for all our coaches, whether they're parents or not. So let's get this started with this here. You know, when you think back, you know, through your experiences as sports parents, and now, you know, John, I know your kids are kind of moving at the latter part of their careers in high school and in college, but just if you just think about the underlying mindset, like what's the one piece of advice or a principle that you would encourage me and Nate to have as sports parents?
I have 4 kids that were all athletic, but I think we're human beings. And I think the most important thing to me is your intention and get in touch with why we're parenting. And we're parenting to make a difference. We're parenting because we want to make a difference in the lives of our children, not in our own lives. And so the emphasis is on the child. And the real winning is turning children into amazing human beings, not human doings. People who grow up as adults that will really then make a difference in the lives of their kids and other people that they come in contact with. So I think your intention has to be examined. Like, whatever you're doing, why are you doing it? and what is the purpose and what
Mhm.
is the meaning behind it other than sports? Sports is just a vehicle. It's a pathway. There's no road to greatness. Greatness is the road, and so you're on the road, and you got the sports as the wonderful vehicle, to help train us. In one Saturday afternoon at a soccer game, you're going to learn more about you could learn more about yourself and your children than you can in a year if they weren't in sports. So intention is really key for me, John.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I've been very public and known both you, Nate, and JP for a long time that my change in the game project journey started when my kids were 4 or 5, 6, and they were just getting into youth sports. So same age as your kids, right? And their mom was a Division 1 athlete and I was a Division 1 athlete, so it was like we had this background in sport and our own experience in sport, but then we're like, well, why are we putting them in this? And so luckily early on we were both very aligned with what was the purpose of sport in our kids' lives, which was to, so that they weren't playing video games, right? They weren't on their phone, that they were out, that they were exercising, that they were being active, that they were hanging out with, friends who were doing the same thing. And then also for us, finding them coaches that were good mentors and role models and things like that. And some who were not, because as Jerry says, it's a great learning environment, right? So, well, what are these difficult moments? What are these things that you can learn to overcome here in sport where it's really not a big deal? I mean, just last night I had a conversation with my son, who's a team captain and a senior in high school, about, some change of practice time, and he was yapping and complaining and how inconvenient it was. And I just listened to him for a while, and then I was like, and how is complaining to me going to solve your problem, man? Like, all you're doing
Mhm.
is adding, you guys are all yapping back and forth and adding stress and anger to your own lives, but you're not fixing the problem. You're just bringing negative energy into it. I'm like, so either solve the problem or accept the fact that practice is going to be on Sunday evening and get on with it, and so, like, there's all these opportunities for reps of life in sport, which usually is a pretty safe environment. And I know Jerry and Jan, like, were very aligned on, this is why our kids are in sport. None of us had any unfulfilled ambitions that we wanted to live vicariously through our kids, and we just let them kind of roll with the experience.
I'm going to have to disagree with John on this point because I don't talk about it much. But that's not true for me. Uh, when Brennan, my third son, got into sports, he was a Jerry lookalike and a mini Jerry, because he had all the same physical qualities, and he became a runner, which is what I was. And I never realized my full potential. I don't think I ever realized my full potential in the sport that I was cut out to do. And so I really did make a lot of mistakes with Brennan. He wound up getting a scholarship to CU, University of Colorado, for running. He was one of the best runners in the state, but that's not the reason why I'm telling you this. I saw that potential in him, and I really interfered. I really got too involved. It was too important to me to see him live out the life that I wanted to live, and he did it to a T until he got to his sophomore year and wound up quitting in college, threw away his scholarship and everything else because he got burnt out. And it was my influence that did that, and I'm not proud of that, but I learned from that. And right now, Brennan's 33 years old, and my whole interaction with Brennan is one of listening. I listen to Brennan a lot, and I listen to what he's saying and what he's doing. How does that feel? And I'm much more of an observer and curious about his journey and the rest of my kids. But boy, I'll tell you, that was a painful experience. I'm just telling parents that are listening to
Mhm.
this, it's so much better just to sit back and ask questions. So, how does that make you feel? Or what do you think would be the best school for you? Or here I was telling him, you got to go to Colorado, man. That's altitude. you're going to train with one of the best coaches in the world who turned out to be one of the lousiest coaches in the world. And I just want to make it certain that we listen more to our kids and ask the questions. It really comes down to the questions. All good coaching comes down to question. All good parenting comes down to questioning and listening, as Betsy Butterick would say. Listening. Learn to listen so that you can listen to learn.
No, I really appreciate that. There's so many good pieces of advice there. Just making sure, like you both said, that we know our intention, our purpose for why we want kids are in sports. It's easy to lose that, right? Especially like you said, Jerry, that we may ourselves not have fulfilled our potential. I guess here's my next question for you here. Let's say you know your intention. Let's say you know your purpose. Let's say that's really front and center for you as a parent, but your kid's in an environment, in a culture, or as a leader, a coach who does not share that same intention or purpose, right? They're very transactional. They're very, there could be a million different things, but what advice do you give to parents who have children in situations that, hey, maybe their kid even wants to be in it because it's the team they need to be on to get, pursue their dreams or whatever it be, or their friends are on that team, but you can recognize that the coaching and the environment is not healthy. How do you manage that, guys?
I mean, I think, we wrote a chapter on this in the new book, and part of that is recognizing, I think, if the environment is difficult or dangerous. We had this conversation a couple of years ago with Jenny Levy, who's a lacrosse coach at North Carolina. And so she told us the story, right? She was an All-American. Her husband was an All-American lacrosse player. Her kids ended up, phenomenal players, played at Carolina and stuff like that as well. But what she talked about is like, as a parent, I have to get, when it comes to the X's and O's, I might disagree with the formation or the practice structure or the drills being done or the positions or things like that. But unless I'm going to coach, I have to trust the coach. I have to give that over. Right. So that's just difficult. And that's when sport is great. Like, okay, deal with that adversity. You don't like the position you're playing, change it. You don't like the fact that you're not starting, do something about it. Right. And as a parent, that's not your place to intervene. I think what you're hinting at more, JP, is like when you cross the line from difficult to dangerous, right? When the environment is one of bullying, of abuse, physical or mental or emotional, when it's unsafe for the human being to be in it. And personally, I don't think there's any team that your kid, quote, has to be on. And the problem that we see, and let's take like USA Gymnastics for an example, and Larry Nassar, everyone had to be with the Carolis, had to be seen by Larry Nassar. And so hundreds of people let their daughters be abused because they didn't want to rock the boat. Was that a wise decision for the human beings? No, I mean, I think it's a terrible decision, right? And so, and again, I wasn't in that room. I'm not in their shoes, but this is what happens when we get so scared of, well, if I rock the boat over something that is putting my child in danger, she or he might, be out of the system. Well, okay, then is that even the system that you want to be a part of?
Jerry, how about yourself? How would you help us maybe better understand the difference between that difficult and dangerous?
Intuitively, as a parent, I'm going to rely on not books I've read, but how I feel. I think every parent listening to this and every coach listening to this podcast, we know when something's dangerous. The problem is not getting so concerned about the struggle and the adversity. John mentioned adversity. And I want to emphasize that one of the values of sport is the opportunity to have to confront adversity, the opportunity to have to deal with struggle. My kids grew up and they were playing soccer their first couple of years. They would go 0-10 and they'd be awarded trophies. I didn't like that. I didn't approve of that. I thought they struggled that year. And I think the conversation shouldn't have been, let's celebrate the fact that we played. We're grateful that we played, but let's celebrate the struggle and let's talk about it and how can we get better. And And what an opportunity to learn to deal with adversity, because quite honestly, my kids are out there in the world right now. They're all in their 30s. One is 40, and they're out there struggling. I mean, they're in combat with the world. I mean, if you really look at the world, and sports is no different. It's volatile out there. It's uncertain. There's a lot of complexity. It's complex. It's ambiguous. The world is that way. Well, sports is just a microcosmic classroom of that world. And so my kids are right in the world and struggling. And, we did kind of a good job as parents allowing them to struggle. But too many times I felt if I had to do over again, I would have let them struggle more. And I wouldn't have just let them hang out on a branch someplace. I would have had a conversation with them about the struggle. I could see how difficult that was. I see the pain that you're feeling. I understand the disappointment. I've been there too. When I was your age, this happened to me. What can you do about it? Ask the question, in what way can you make this a little easier for yourself? So these are all learning opportunities in a volatile world of sport, which is always going to be that way.
Well, let me ask you from a little bit different angle here. I think one of the instincts of parents is this desire to rescue their kids when they face adversity, or there's an opportunity for them to grow in resiliency because they didn't make the starting lineup or the A team or the varsity team. And we see so many parents today that then want to swoop in and almost be like the superhero for their kid. And I don't know if that's for them or that's really because they're trying to give their kid every opportunity to succeed, or maybe it's both. But what do you say to, a parent that starts to feel that urge? Do I email the coach? Do I do something? Do I say something? Do I go to the athletic director or the director of the club? When maybe in reality, the child just needs more space to struggle. How can we help parents perhaps better understand that?
Be a guide. Be in the background. It's like I compare a good sports parent to being a good waiter. And now I can speak because maybe all of you guys have waited tables, but being a great waiter or a great server in a restaurant really means not being at the table. It means being away from the table and observing what's going on at that table. And if the water glass is down to this, and they pick up the glass and they don't, and you could see that they're looking for water, then you enter and go pour the water. Or if it looks like they're disgruntled with something that they're eating, then you enter the table. But other than that, I'm at a restaurant. I don't want to be asked with food in my mouth. So how's the food? And I'm chewing away. I can't even talk, and I have to tell them, wait a minute, so I can talk to you. A good parent, a good sports parent will be in the background, but always there. And the kid knows that you're always there, waiting for the opportune moment to enter. And to your point, Nate, I think it could be a combination of both. But I think in most cases, parents have a strong need to define their value as a parent by the success of their kids, and success is defined by the outcome on the scoreboard: points scored, shots blocked, scholarships offered, the next train to Stanford, right? This is what I want from my kid. But really, getting back to my story about Brennan, what I really wanted, honest to God, I wanted him to experience what I wanted to experience. But by him going to school and getting a scholarship, that's what I wanted. So that fulfilled me in a way. I did it through my child. And so I think a lot of parents who are rescuing their kids, they have to, again, come back, ask yourself the question, why am I doing this? This is a great point you're making, Nate. And I think the parent has to ask themselves the question. Bottom line is, be a good waiter, stand in the background and always watch and be observant and be there for them when they need it.
And Nate, you've experienced this as a coach. I've experienced it as a coach, just parents intervening, getting involved, getting in panic mode for their kids over the smallest little things, right? And because I think they don't take the long view, right? They take this month is the only thing that matters, right? And so if we can encourage parents to look at youth sport as a small slice of a lifetime in sport, it's a very, a little bit of adversity this month or this season is a good thing. I also think sport is this microcosm of society, right? So the teachers are dealing with this as well, where, you give a kid a B and, oh my God, got to get that B off my kid's record. Let me harass the teacher until they change the grade or whatever, instead of saying, what's good about this? So I always encourage parents, like, first of all, don't react right immediately after the game. Take some time, 24, 48 hours, let the emotion go, and then try to respond, but ask, like, well, what's good about this from a perspective of this struggle for my kid? Why is this a good thing? And then do I really need to deal with that? I mean, it's funny because with this desire of, like, oh my God, well, got to get the kid recruited to college or something like that. I mean, the college coaches I talk to, they're actually always looking for moments of adversity for the kids. Like, they like adversity. Like, they want to see them get benched. They want to see them struggle. They want to see these moments and how they come through it, right? Everyone's great when you're up 30 and you're just slinging threes because it doesn't matter and there's no pressure. But what happens when you're down? And so I think this is the thing that we just have to keep encouraging parents of: take some time, get the emotion out of it, and then take this long view. And what are the good things about this adversity your kid is facing in this moment versus what are the things that are not?
John, I like what you said about waiting 24 to 48 hours. But it's so great to take that pause, because not only are you feeling emotional, but the kids are feeling emotional. When I'm feeling emotional, I can't listen. I can't learn. I have to have some equanimity. I have to have some levity, some kind of balance. So I love that idea of waiting. And to Nate's point, like, specifically, what can we do? I've got a question I love to ask people. I ask my athletes as a whole team, like, after a loss, the next day, the question is, why are we a better team because we got trounced, we got crushed yesterday? Why are you a better athlete, or why are you a better person because of that setback? And what you do is you're training them to think very differently, outside the box, instead of thinking, why was that such a terrible loss and what can you do to get better? It's more like, why are you better because of it? And so now the kid's starting to learn that, oh, loss, setbacks, struggle, adversity, these are all learning opportunities. And in fact, everything that I am today, every book that I've written, every team that I've won with, has been the result of errors, setbacks, mistakes that either I've made or they've made. And that's how we learn. That's how we get good at it. It's trial and error. And that's what life is.
Jerry, I loved your metaphor of the waiter, for parents to think of themselves as a waiter. We've used this podcast before, discussing, like, the parent is a passenger in the car, the kid's in the driver's seat, but we're a passenger in the car, and hopefully we're not like my wife when she's a passenger and constantly in my ear about how I should be driving. But the idea is just, being a bit of a passenger, and they still have control of that experience. So I love that metaphor. Here's a question for you both. What's a mistake you made as a parent, and at the time you thought you were doing the right thing for your kid? Because I think this is a hard thing. Every parent is doing things that they think is good for their kid.
Well, I think the hardest thing as a parent is not necessarily to see your kid make a bad pass or miss a shot or something like that. I think the hardest thing is when you feel like they're not giving their best effort. At least that was it for me, right? Like, get out there and just compete and try your hardest. And so I think for me, it was in those moments when you see your child not what you think is giving their best effort, and then not figuring out, well, why? Like, why were you tired? Were you sick? Were you scared? Were you whatever? Especially when they were young, when they're young. And so I think that's one of the things. And so for me, definitely mistake which I did a couple times, probably more with my son than my daughter, would have been like car ride conversations that was not the appropriate time for those conversations. Sometimes coming at this with a coach hat instead of a dad hat, right? And that practice should be over, but I'm like, you're not working hard out there. You're not going to make this team. You're not going to play. You're not going to do this. Right? That's the coach, trying to coach someone to be better instead of a dad who just recognizes my kid needs a moment here to unwind because that was a tough day. So that would be my biggest moment. Then again, it's done. These things are done out of love, right? They're not done out of I want to hurt my kid. It's like I want to help them be better, and you'll be better if you compete and you're focused and whatever.
Before you jump in there, Jerry, I just want to highlight what you shared there, John, because I really appreciate it, because I know that probably some of the listeners struggle with this. I know I struggle with this as a parent, is we want to have standards in our family, like, and that is, if you're going to do something, you should be committed, and you should have a good attitude, and you give good effort. And what you shared there was not lowering the standard and say, well, you can go out there and be lazy, but just, if the effort's not at what we expect, from our kids, find out why. So just want to highlight that, because I think that was a really great example. And
well, find
I'll
out
take
why.
that.
And also, you don't drop the standard. You just choose better moments to raise the question around the standard.
Yeah,
why aren't you doing it? But in highly emotional, after a hard loss, after a hard practice, whatever it is not the moment to raise the question.
But when I listen to what you're saying, John, it comes back to the biggest mistake I've made and continue to make in my relationships with everybody, including my partner, Jan, and is listening. The most powerful tool that a coach, a mentor, a teacher, a parent, a leader can have is listening. It sounds so simple, but it's not easy. And this is one of the things I did learn from Betsy, and that is, when I thought I was being a good listener to my kids, here's what I was doing. This is my mistake. I would hear them through my ears. And as I was hearing what they were saying, I was coming up with a way to fix it. Or I was coming up with a way to criticize or discount or disprove, or to make it better for them, or to save them, or to do whatever I needed to do because I'm a parent or I'm a coach, and that's what we do, right? But true listening, and this covers this point that we just made. True listening is asking yourself the question. Since we're asking all these questions, let's ask ourselves a question. And the question is, Jan comes upstairs here, and I'm sitting at my computer, and she has a concern. I'm going to say to myself, if I'm really spot on and being the best coach I can be, is, what can I learn here? When my kid is talking, coming home from a game or after a game in the car, rather than me trying to fix something or give advice or take care of things and make sure they've got the answer for this and blah, 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 I listen. I truly listen. And the listening is, I'm going to learn something here. What can that be?
Well, Jerry, what you're describing there was actually one of probably the most pivotal mindset shifts for me as a coach. And I think I'm starting to learn this as a parent of a 7 and 10-year-olds as well. When I understood that I don't know what it's actually like to be a teenage girl today, that opened up, this idea of curiosity of like, I don't know what it's like to be coached by me. I don't know really what it feels like to be parented by me, And I think one of the challenges for parents is that we assume that we know because we played, or because of, the way they were parented or the way they were raised. But it's different today, and maybe that's an interesting question to explore just for a second here, because the experience that our kids are having are different from what we experienced when we were kids. I think in both how we're parented, the sports landscape is far different in terms of just, the youth environment. What observations do you see, just in your work and in your experience with your own kids, that is so significantly different that maybe parents don't necessarily have an appreciation for in terms of what kids are trying to navigate in today's world that's different from what they experienced?
I mean, I think first of all, right, they grow up with these things, the phones, and the psychologist Jonathan Haidt just wrote a new book, and he says the difference: for thousands of years, children grew up in a play-based childhood, and now it's a phone-based childhood. So we give them electronics, and we stifle creativity, and we don't let them be bored, and that. Then you have all this public pressure, because you can see another 9-year-old somewhere else in the world, and why are they better than me, right? Then we have this race in academics and athletics and music and all these things to be this prodigy, to get a head start, to get into the pipeline. And so I think all of these things go together, and kids feel this pressure, right? So they feel this pressure of like, well, my friends are getting better than me, so I bet I think I need to go to that camp, or I need to do that, and parents do as well. So I mean, sport is so different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. I mean, I talk to my college teammates all the time about how much higher the level is, and how much higher the expectations on a college athlete are than they were 30 years ago. So I think, yeah, a kid who has so many other distractions or ways to get immediate satisfaction, ways to spend his or her time, we have to find sporting environments for them that make it better than playing Fortnite, make it better than something else that they can hit the reset button and they can be with their friends. They're online, they're doing all this stuff, right? Like when we were kids, you want to be with your friends, you had to be with your friends. Now you put on a headset and play a video game, and you're shooting aliens with your friends. So we have this sort of false sense of community, but it can fill this immediate need for connection. And so, higher commitments, higher expectations, higher training loads, kids told, you're on this path or that path at really young ages. I mean, when I was in high school, no one thought about where they might play in college till they were a senior. Right. And now you've got middle school kids thinking about it. Now, I mean, we don't even know what the outcome is of rolling in NIL money. I mean, we have states where high school kids can get image and likeness money, right? There's agents out there helping kids sell themselves so they can get sponsored when they're 14. So yeah, sport's a little different.
Kids are feeling bullied. There's a lot more bullying going on today. People making fun of, a lot less acceptance of people. I'm big on acronyms, and the one acronym I put together on this one is PADS, PADS. And it helps remind me that there's a lot of pressure, anxiety, depression, and stress on these kids in this world today. I never had that. Never. I never felt pressure. I never felt anxiety. So the world has changed, and these kids, they're, as parents, they're trying to navigate the uncharted waters of life. And this brings up even more reason to listen, because if you listen, you might learn something. And kids, Nate, I'm sure with your children, your 7 and 10-year-old, as well as the girls that you coach, the more you listen, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more effective you're going to be. More than ever, we need parents. We need sports parents with kids in sports, to be able to listen, to be able to be compassionate, understand that loss is not easy, to listen to the loss, to suggest to them why are they better, emphasize, be proactive with it rather than reactive, like, why did you lose? Why are you better because of the loss?
It's a lot of great insights today, guys. I have a question here for you that I want to go kind of practical suggestions from Jerry and John for parents, really practical behaviors for each of you to share one thing that you would like every sports parent to start doing, one thing you'd like them to stop do or to not do, and one thing you'd like for sports parents to keep doing. Start, stop, and keep. What would be your start doing? What would be your stop, do, or not do? What would be something they could keep doing?
Great question, man.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, so I'd say as we're getting to the end, first of all, like I think one of the most important things that I am constantly reminded of is I know the listeners here are coaches and some are parents, maybe some are not, but parents are the most influential people in your athletes' lives. And so the idea that you could ignore them or not engage them is crazy. And I had someone on the podcast a couple of weeks ago who was a professional soccer player, 600 games in England he played. And he said, when I was 34, who do you think was the first person I called after I played? It was my dad. So at 34 years old, a professional, dad's opinion still matters a lot. So to think that you're coaching a 12-year-old and, oh, you know what, I don't deal with parents or whatever is crazy. So just coaches, remember that your best post-game talk, your best coaching can be undone or supported based on how you educate and help your parents out. If we look at this as societally, like, right, what the parents need to start doing, just be patient, right? Just be patient, just and enjoy this journey. Now that my kids are going off to college, it's like, man, it goes by so fast. So just, and when you get to look back on it, you can see all these important moments where you either messed up or you didn't. And hopefully there's moments there that you're like, wow, I was patient and I watched my kid get through that. And the next year they made the A team and not the B team. And they were so excited because they had put in the work. And we use that as a moment of growth. So start enjoying the journey and being patient. Stop just living vicariously through your kids or comparing your child's journey to someone else's journey. You guys both have multiple kids. Are they alike? No. And they have the same parents and they eat the same food and live in the same house and they're different. So why would you think your kid's going to be just like some other kid? So yeah, they got asked to play up or they're doing this extra camp or whatever. Who cares? It's not your kid. Right. So stop comparing and just let them be. And then keep doing, like, just keep loving your kids unconditionally, not based on how they do in sports or whatever. And I don't think anyone who listens to this does that, but sometimes our words or actions make our kids feel like, our love is conditional on whether they win or lose or how they play.
That idea of patience is so crucial. And it's crucial in my life every day, being patient, being understanding. What I would do is I would start to play my role. There are many roles on the ball field. There's the coaching role, there's the umpire, there's the role of being a parent. And we sometimes feel like with the coach, we can scream out things to our kids. Or we can get in the face of an umpire, or we can argue with other parents. Our role is simply to be there in support of our children and enjoy watching the unfolding of the development of your child as a human being. That's your role, nothing else. And so what that plays into is to stop doing. So after you leave the ballpark or the basketball court, and you're going home in the car, just to listen, to stop fixing it. When you were on third base, you didn't take enough lead and you could have stolen home. Don't worry, the pitcher's a left-handed pitcher. He's not going to go to third base on you. And no. Maybe the words you want to use on the way home is who wants to have lunch? And that's it. That's the end of it. And everyone wants to eat after a game, right? That's what the kids want to do. They're kids. They love to eat. So we'll take them there. So I would stop trying to fix it and have a conversation in the car based on them. You might even prompt them by saying, is there anything you care to talk about? No, I just want to eat. Okay, cool. And you continue driving. And the thing that you keep, I love what John said about the love. The way love shows up for me is we always tell each other that we love each other. Now, that's one level. But I think love can go deeper without even saying any words. And what I think a lot of parents need to keep is keep being grateful for what you have and stop looking for what you don't have. I think a lot of pain and a lot of suffering in the world comes from wanting what we don't have or not wanting what we have. Think about that. So wanting what you have, what you don't have. I don't have a kid who's going to listen to me. I don't have a kid who's going to play his all and on. And I don't have a scholarship coming down the road. Or not wanting what you have. You know, you have a kid who's injured, or a kid who doesn't care about sports anymore. And so that creates suffering within the parents. Rather than focus on wanting and not wanting, one of the exercises I like to do in my daily life. I mean, this is a journey, I have to practice this stuff, and it doesn't come naturally, but keep being grateful for what you have. You have an amazing child there, a human being who's very curious about life, and they don't need anything more than you to know that they're going to feel secure that you're going to be there when they need you. And what else are you grateful for? Their health. My gosh, you come away from a game and they didn't score, or they didn't do this, they didn't do that. You got a healthy child there that's capable of playing sport. You have a wonderful human being who's very kind and very patient if you're not. And you're grateful for this opportunity to have these children in your life where you can guide and mentor them into being those great human beings. When I come from a place of gratefulness, I kind of silence, and all the other stuff and chatter in the background gets quiet. So again, if I were to summarize, I'd say, when you go show up at the ball game, know what your role is. And you have one role. You can't do all four. All right? So do your role. Stop trying to fix things when you see that you can fix them. Be more curious and ask your kids, how can I help here? And finally, tune into being a little bit more grateful, and keep that aspect of your life going, because we go from grateful to great. And I find that most people who are grateful are very happy as well.
Well, fellas, this has been fantastic. So much great advice for Nate and myself. The newest book you have, The Champion Sports Parent, what I absolutely just caught my attention right away was in the first section, like, to become a better sports parent, you have to become a better you. Love that advice. That's something I give a lot around coaching. Become a better coach. We got to become a better version of ourselves as well too. So it is, there's so many questions we didn't get to, but that book I know has so many of the answers of I think a lot of times that we struggle with as sports parents.
Or if not answers, again, I don't want to feel like I have answers, or John feels this way too, John. But we have a lot of questions, and you'll be able to ask those questions. But could I read just a short paragraph here before we end? At the end of the book, in the conclusion, John and I talk about how the journey is just beginning. This is an interesting paragraph. And it's a quote from Winston Churchill, who said, "To each there comes a time in their lifetime, a special moment, when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour." To which I say, being a champion sports parent is this moment. This is a moment to be not just a champion sports parent, but to be prepared and qualified for guiding and leading these young great spirits into the future. When all is said and done, you will never remember the loss that we had on Saturday night, right?
Thanks, fellas, so much. Thanks for reading that, Jerry. Appreciate you guys as always.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Nate. Thanks, JP. Great to see you guys again.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be with you.
All right, that wraps up today's episode with John O'Sullivan and Dr. Jerry Lynch. I hope you enjoyed their insights. If you're a sports parent, be sure to check out The Champion Sports Parent. You'll find the link in the episode details. If you've ever thought about working together, just a little bit about myself. Since 2017, I've been coaching and consulting on team culture, leadership, and character development in sports. I work with teams, clubs, athletic departments to develop stronger cultures and better coaches. We do that through my online courses, on-site facilitation, one-on-one coaching, and some of my keynote speaking. If that sounds like something your organization needs, you can reach out to see if we're a good fit. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Culture Podcast. If you found this episode valuable, we'd love for you to leave us a review, but most of all, share it with your fellow coaches, friends, and yes, even your sports parents out there. I think these episodes that we record, hopefully they make for great conversations starters with people in your circle. So lastly, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.